It started with the ice melting in my drink faster than it should have. Not because of the weather, it was a crisp evening in October, and the air still bit a little, but because of the way Jessica was smiling across the room at a man I didn't know. Not smiling like a hello, or even like a polite colleague nod. No, this was a smile like a secret. A crooked kind of smile. The one she used to give me in our early days when she'd sneak up behind me at the store and steal something from my cart just to mess with me. I had brought her to the party. She didn't even want me to come at first. Said it was just work stuff, and that I'd be bored out of my mind. But something in me refused to sit at home that night. Maybe I was already suspicious. Maybe something had already shifted, and my brain was playing catch-up. I told her I'd go, and her pause was half a second too long. She said, "Sure," with a tone so flat you could skate on it. The event was held in a glass building uptown. The kind where the floor-to-ceiling windows show you the whole city blinking like it's trying to wink away the truth. People were dressed sharp, talking fast, holding drinks they barely sipped. I spent the first hour trying to stay out of conversations I didn't care about and watching Jessica glide through the crowd like she belonged to it more than to me. She was wearing a dark green dress that she hadn't mentioned buying. I noticed that. Then there was him. He looked like he came from money but didn't have to work for it. The kind of guy who gets invited everywhere but still acts like he's doing you a favor by showing up. He had a voice that didn't match his face. Too smooth, too calculated. I watched her lean in when he talked. Not physically, mentally. Like every word he said unlocked something she'd kept locked up around me. They disappeared around the corner near the back stairs. I waited. First 5 minutes. Then 10. I didn't move. Just stared at the spot they vanished into, trying to decide whether I was being paranoid or just a coward. 15 minutes passed. That was enough. I walked past groups of strangers laughing too loud, brushing off 2 people who tried to stop me with questions. I followed the path they took and found the door to the service stairs cracked open. I didn't go in. I didn't need to. I just waited. Another 5 minutes later, I saw him come back. Alone. No Jessica. He looked right at me, didn't flinch, didn't break eye contact. Just smiled. Not friendly. Not smug. Like I wasn't even there. Like he knew something I didn't. And then, like she had nothing to explain, Jessica came strolling back to the main floor 5 minutes after that. Hair perfect. Smile forced. She locked eyes with me, and I saw her hesitate. Not from guilt, but like she was calculating how much I saw. I asked her where she'd gone. Just talking, she said. He had some ideas about an investment opportunity. I thought you were mingling. She didn't ask what I was doing. Didn't ask if I was okay. She just picked up a fresh drink and moved to another circle of people like the conversation never happened. Like I never happened. We left the party separately. That's important. She didn't even offer to ride back with me. Said she was getting a lift from one of her friends. When I asked who, she waved me off. Someone from work, she said. Why are you being weird? I didn't argue. I nodded. I went home, but I didn't sleep. I changed the locks before sunrise. She came back the next day at noon like nothing was wrong. Wearing his hoodie. Not kidding. A pale gray zip-up that I had never seen in our house before. Sleeves too long for her arms. Her hand reached into her purse, grabbed her key, slid it into the lock. It didn't turn. She tried again. Nothing. I opened the door before she could ring the bell. Her expression didn't break right away. That was the scariest part. She just looked at me like I had offended her. Why did you change the locks? She asked, like it was an inconvenience. Like she had forgotten where she was the night before, and I just stared at her, waiting to see how deep the hole would go, waiting to see what lie she'd throw first. She didn't blink. That's what really got me. She stood there, holding that fake leather bag I bought her 2 birthdays ago, like the world owed her an explanation, not the other way around. No panic, no shame, just irritation. Her key still clutched in her hand like she was going to force the lock to surrender if she stared long enough. I asked you a question, she said again. Why did you change the locks? I leaned on the doorframe and crossed my arms, studying her. That hoodie was still zipped halfway up, and I could see a thin chain around her neck I knew for a fact wasn't there yesterday. I didn't answer. Not right away. I wanted to see if she'd fold. But she didn't. She just sighed. Actually sighed. Like I was being dramatic. You're seriously doing this? She said. Because I went home with a friend? There it was. No denial. No surprise. No apology. She just laid it out like she'd taken the wrong exit off the highway and was waiting for me to reroute her GPS. I took a slow breath and stepped aside from the door. Not to let her in, but just enough so she could see into the hallway behind me. Empty. Quiet. Like the house had already started learning to forget her. You didn't go home, I said. You disappeared. With some guy you didn't mention knowing. And I waited. And watched. And when you came back, you looked at me like I was the help. She rolled her eyes. Rolled them. Brian, you're being ridiculous. His name is Trevor. We work together. He offered to talk about a property thing. I had 2 drinks. I didn't want to drive. You're seriously making this a thing. I tilted my head. And the hoodie? What? The hoodie. Never seen it before. Not yours. Not mine. So unless you joined a cult that gives out uniforms, maybe explain that part. She had the nerve to laugh. It was short, fake, sharp. Wow. Okay. You're really digging. You want it to be something, don't you? No, I said quietly. I know it's something. I'm just giving you the chance to tell the truth. She looked past me into the house again, scanning for, what? Her stuff? A suitcase? A clue that she hadn't already lost? You changed the locks because I went to talk business with someone and crashed at their place? You didn't text me, I said. Not once. You ignored 3 calls. You left with him, came back wearing his clothes, and you didn't even try to lie well. She smiled, but not the kind that comes from humor. This one had teeth. Fine, she said. You want it? Here it is. I went to his place. I stayed over. I didn't do anything wrong except not tell you because I knew you'd react like this. Controlling. Paranoid. Changing the locks? You're not punishing me. You're embarrassing yourself. She said it all like she was reading from a script. No pause. No shame. Just cold performance. I stepped back inside, not bothering to slam the door, not giving her the satisfaction. But I did say one more thing before I closed it. I packed your things. They're in the garage. If you want to play pretend, you can do it on your own time. I'm done being the audience. Then I shut the door. I didn't lock it. I knew she'd try it anyway. She did. 30 seconds later, the handle clicked once. Then twice. Then silence. She didn't knock again. Didn't call. But 20 minutes later, I got a text. You're being insane. I don't even know who you are anymore. And that was the moment I realized she'd been showing me exactly who she was all along. I just hadn't wanted to see it. The text sat there on my screen, glowing like a lie under a spotlight. You're being insane. I don't even know who you are anymore. I read it once, then again, like maybe the words would shift into something human the second time. They didn't. They stayed sharp, dry, and utterly predictable. I didn't reply, not because I didn't have words, but because none of them were worth wasting on someone who thought insanity was refusing to be disrespected twice in the same breath. I sat in the kitchen for a while, just listening to the silence. It was a strange kind of silence, the kind that didn't settle in, but pressed down. No footsteps upstairs. No cabinet doors opening. No cheap reality shows buzzing from the living room TV. Just stillness, like the house itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what I'd do next. I opened the garage. Her things were there, boxed. I'd done it between 4 and 7 a.m. that morning, running on no sleep and whatever you call that fuel made of betrayal and adrenaline. Clothes, shoes, skincare stuff that always smelled expensive and artificial. I'd even packed the curling iron she never unplugged. Everything was there except the photos. I'd pulled those out before sealing the boxes. The picture from our trip to Maine? Gone. The Polaroid from that wedding in San Diego where we slow danced in a hotel hallway at 2 a.m.? Ripped in half, both pieces in the trash. There was nothing to preserve anymore, only proof to erase. Then I did something I didn't plan on. I drove to her office. Not because I wanted to see her, but because I needed to see him. Trevor. She had said his name like it was supposed to make me feel better. Like putting a label on the infection somehow made it harmless. I parked across the street from the building, waited 15 minutes. Long enough to convince myself it was a bad idea. Then 5 more just to make sure I did it anyway. And there he was, walking out of the front doors like he didn't carry the wreckage of another man's life in his pocket. He was laughing, and holding his phone, nodding at someone who wasn't there. That hoodie she wore? He was wearing the same one, just a different color. Pattern, zipper, brand. I couldn't believe how casual it all looked. Like this was just Tuesday for him. He crossed the street toward a coffee shop, and I followed. Not close, just enough to watch. He ordered something complicated, sat down at a table, and pulled out his laptop. 2 minutes later, she walked in. Jessica. No shame. No sunglasses. No hat pulled low. She walked in like she owned the place. I didn't move. I didn't confront her there. Something in me wanted to, but not like this. Not when she was still comfortable enough to laugh with him like this was a romance instead of a theft. Instead, I waited until she sat down. Waited until she kissed him. Then I walked away. I didn't rage. Didn't punch a wall or throw my phone. I just walked to my car, sat in the driver's seat, and let that moment burn into my brain. Because now I had clarity. No more maybe, no more doubt. Just the truth in high definition. My wife, no, the woman I used to call my wife, had kissed another man in public while I was still deleting her contact photo. And here's the twist. She didn't come back for her boxes. That night, I got another text. You seriously stalked me? You need help. This isn't normal. Still no apology. Still no remorse. Just the pure arrogance of someone who thought I was the problem for not quietly accepting her betrayal. But I didn't reply. I didn't have to, because the next move, it was going to be mine. And for once, it wasn't going to be reactive. It was going to be deliberate. I wasn't just going to walk away. I was going to let her feel what it was like to be completely, terrifyingly irrelevant. And that's when I made the call. Not to her, not to him, but to her mother. Her mother answered on the third ring. Brian? She said, cautious, like she hadn't heard from me in months, which she hadn't. Jessica had always done most of the talking when it came to her family. Filtered conversations, curated updates, sugar-coated truths. They didn't know much about our life beyond what she painted for them, and I'd always respected that line. Until now. Hey, Karen, I said, calm but firm. I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. A pause. Okay. Do you know a man named Trevor? Silence. I could hear the TV in the background, some daytime game show, probably muted now. A small delay, and then, Jessica's coworker? She said, cautiously. So she had mentioned him. She told you about him? Just in passing, Karen said. Why? What's going on? She's been cheating on me with him, I said. No theatrics. No build-up. Just the blunt, frozen truth. Another pause. Then, a low, sharp breath. Oh my God. Brian. She left a party with him. Came home the next day wearing his clothes. Lied about it to my face. I changed the locks. I packed her stuff. She still hasn't come to get it. I wasn't expecting her to take sides. Honestly, I didn't even know why I called. Maybe part of me wanted confirmation. Maybe I just needed someone who had raised Jessica to hear what kind of woman she turned into. But Karen went quiet. Not defensive. Not shocked exactly, just heavy. She's been different lately, she said finally. Distant. I thought maybe it was stress. I didn't know it was this. I didn't say anything. I just let that silence hang. Let her sit in the realization that her daughter was not the person she used to brag about at holiday dinners. Karen's voice lowered. Do you want me to talk to her? No, I said. I just want you to know. In case she spins a story, which she will. I want you to have the truth before she paints me as the villain. Karen sighed. I appreciate you telling me. Really. And I'm sorry. I always thought. She stopped herself. You didn't deserve that. I thanked her, ended the call, and stared at my contact list for a while. My thumb hovered over Jessica's name. I didn't want to text her, but I did want her to know something. So I sent her exactly 4 words. I called your mother. 3 dots appeared. Then nothing. Then again. Then, wow, you're actually sick. That was it. She had no fear, no panic, just contempt. Like I was embarrassing her by pulling the curtain back on her little performance. The next morning, I came out to find her boxes gone. Not a knock. Not a call. She must have come in the night. The garage door was still unlocked. My mistake. But taped to the inside of the door, she'd left a note. Not handwritten. Printed. On clean white paper. probably typed at work like it was a resignation letter. It said, "You clearly need time to deal with whatever story you've built in your head. I hope one day you realize how controlling and toxic you've become. I'm not going to fight with you. I'm moving forward with my life. If you want to talk like adults, you know where to find me." No signature. No name. Just her arrogance, bold and smug in 12-point font. I folded the paper in half, then again, until it was nothing but a tight little square of denial. I didn't throw it away. Not yet. I wanted to keep it. A souvenir from the moment I stopped loving her. Because here's what she didn't know. She hadn't just burned a bridge. She'd lit the whole city on fire and handed me the matches with a smile. And I hadn't even begun to respond that I didn't reach out. Not that week, not the next. Her note sat untouched in my drawer like some cursed document. A quiet reminder of just how little remorse she was capable of. But I wasn't sitting in grief anymore. Something had shifted. Grief had moved over. And in its place came a cleaner, colder clarity. I had no intentions of chasing closure from a woman who typed a breakup like an HR memo. What she didn't realize was that she hadn't left behind a broken man. She left behind a man with time, space, and a very long memory. And then something happened. It was a Friday. I had just come back from the gym, trying to keep my head straight, and there was a knock on the door. Not the usual timid knock of a neighbor or a package delivery. This was firm, repetitive, like someone who expected to be let in. I opened it to find Amanda, Jessica's best friend since college, standing on my porch like she had a right to be there. Amanda and I had always had an odd sort of cold civility. We were polite, never warm. She was always Jessica's friend, never ours. But now she looked pissed, not confused, not apologetic. "I need to talk to you," she said without waiting for an invite. "About Jessica." I stepped aside, mostly because I wanted to hear what performance piece she'd prepared. She walked in like a lawyer who came to clean up a mess her client was too stupid to fix. "She told me everything," Amanda started. "Or at least her version. Said you were spying on her, controlling her, freezing her out emotionally for months." "Right?" I said. "And you bought that?" Amanda narrowed her eyes. "No, that's the thing. I didn't. Not fully." I sat down across from her at the kitchen table. She remained standing. "She's changed," Amanda admitted. "I've known her since we were 18, and she's always had this way of making herself the victim. But this time it felt off. Cold. She wasn't upset about the split. She was annoyed. She was already gone before I changed the locks," I said. She didn't flinch when I confronted her. She lied with the confidence of a person who'd rehearsed it, then doubled down when caught. Amanda hesitated, then sat down. That was when I knew she had more. "She's still seeing him, Trevor." I figured. "No," Amanda said. "I mean seriously seeing him. It's not just a fling. She's acting like they're some kind of power couple now. He came to our brunch last weekend like he'd been there all along. She introduced him like we should all just shift seamlessly into accepting it. She always did expect the world to rearrange itself around her." Amanda looked genuinely uncomfortable now, like what she was about to say next didn't sit right in her stomach. "She told us you were emotionally abusive." I stared at her. "Do you believe her?" "No," Amanda said quickly. "I've been around you two for years. You were patient. If anything, you were too forgiving. But that's not the worst part." I leaned forward. "Go on." "She's rewriting everything. Said she never really loved you, that she felt trapped. That you pressured her into getting married, into buying the house, even into quitting her last job." I blinked. "She quit her last job to start her own side business. I supported her. She used my savings for it." "I know," Amanda said. "That's when I realized she's not just lying to herself. She's lying to everyone. And she's doing it so effortlessly. It's terrifying." I sat back in my chair, the weight of it settling in deeper than I expected. Not because I was surprised, but because I finally understood. She wasn't reacting out of guilt or fear. She was rebuilding the narrative. Brick by brick, lie by lie. "I thought you should know," Amanda said, standing up again. "I didn't come here for drama. I couldn't pretend I didn't see it anymore." I walked her to the door. Before leaving, she turned. "I think she's going to come for more." She's not done yet. What more could she want? Amanda looked me straight in the eye. To win. And just like that, I knew exactly what Jessica would do next. She wouldn't disappear. She wasn't built to quietly fade out. She would escalate. She would twist. She would perform. And I needed to be ready, because she wasn't done breaking things. She wanted the spotlight, and I was about to show her that I was done being her stage. Amanda was right. 3 days later, I got a letter. Not a text, not a call, a letter. Hand-delivered. Not from Jessica, of course. From a lawyer. Neatly typed. Sealed in an envelope that smelled like copy paper and bad faith. I opened it at the kitchen counter, heart steady, hands dry. I already knew it wouldn't surprise me. And I was right. Inside was a formal request for mediation regarding shared property and assets acquired during the duration of the marriage. Jessica wanted half the house. I laughed out loud. Actually laughed. This woman, who hadn't paid a dime toward the down payment, who used my emergency fund to start her Etsy business that tanked in 5 months, who walked out of our home to play house with a man who wore cologne like a warning label, now wanted to negotiate as if she were the wounded party. I sat down, reread the letter twice. There was no mention of infidelity, of course. No acknowledgement of the betrayal, the lies, the disappearing act. Just bland legal phrasing and a numbered list of what she considered equitable division. She wanted the car too. The one she never learned to parallel park. It was so absurd. I had to walk it off. I went outside, walked 3 laps around the block, then came back inside and poured myself a glass of water like I was preparing for battle. Because that's exactly what this was. A quiet, calculated ambush. The emotional part was over for her. Now she wanted what she thought she deserved for her suffering. So I called my lawyer. Mr. Ellison had handled the closing when I bought the house. Older guy, sharp, polite in a way that made people underestimate him. He answered on the second ring. "Brian," he said, "I heard from them. You're not going to believe what she's asking for." He chuckled. "Oh, I believe it. I've seen worse." "I'm not giving her the house," I said. "She left. She lied. She stayed with someone else while we were married." "Does she know you have evidence?" "I have Amanda. I have texts. I have timestamps." Ellison was quiet for a second. Then, "Good. That makes my job easier. But I'll be honest, you're not just dealing with someone who wants property. You're dealing with someone who wants to rewrite the ending. And women like her, when they start losing control of the narrative, they get desperate." I knew what he meant. Jessica didn't want closure. She wanted applause. She wanted to land on her feet in a new relationship with her name clean, her ego untouched, and her hands full. And I was the inconvenient obstacle she needed to bulldoze for that story to hold up. So I agreed to mediation, not because I planned to fold, but because I wanted her to look me in the eye and realize something had changed. Me. The first session was set for the following week. In the meantime, Jessica started testing the waters. She texted me that Wednesday, "I think we should be civil. We don't have to destroy each other just because things didn't work. No greeting. No, how are you? Just a cool suggestion, like she was offering to split a dinner bill instead of tear apart a life she lit on fire." I didn't reply. She followed up an hour later. "Also, if you're going to keep talking to Amanda, maybe ask her to stop spreading misinformation. It's making things messy." There it was, the control creeping back in. She wasn't mad I'd told Amanda. She was mad Amanda wasn't obeying the script. I blocked the number. Not out of rage. Out of strategy. Let her stew in silence. Let her realize she couldn't manage me anymore. Couldn't keep me on the line with guilt and theatrics. That Friday, Amanda texted me again. "She's spinning. Trevor's starting to back off. I think he's seeing through it." I asked what she meant. "She's calling him controlling now. Telling people he's emotionally inconsistent. She's trying to reset the pattern. Make herself the victim again." And in that moment, I saw the next move clearly. Jessica wasn't just discarding people. She was rearranging them like props. When one story started slipping, she'd draft a new one. But eventually, there wouldn't be enough props left to keep the stage full. And when the lights went out, I was going to be the only one standing outside the theater with the ticket stub and the truth. Because I hadn't just survived her. I'd studied her. The mediation took place in a downtown office that smelled like coffee and paper cuts. Neutral, sterile, the kind of place where people smile politely while trying to carve each other up in increments. I wore a button-up shirt and silence. Jessica showed up 12 minutes late in heels too loud for hardwood and a dress she absolutely chose for optics. The kind of outfit you wear when you want to look like the reasonable one in the room. She didn't look at me when she sat down. Not once. She greeted the mediator with a soft, strained smile and placed her phone on the table, screen up, like she was waiting for someone more important to text her. Probably Trevor. Or maybe a backup Trevor. Mr. Ellison was already flipping through documents. Her lawyer, a younger guy with nervous eyes and a comb-over that committed to nothing, opened with pleasantries. I gave none. The mediator, a woman named Karen, not her mother, began with her practiced intro. We're here to seek a fair resolution for both parties. I tuned it out. I was watching Jessica's jaw twitch the way it always did when she was holding in something sharp. But this time I knew better than to assume that meant regret. She was strategizing. They started by discussing the house. She wanted a 50-50 split of the property value. Not even half the equity, the whole market value. As if she hadn't left. As if she'd paid for the roof, the new furnace, the mortgage payments. As if she had been a participant instead of a disappearing act in designer shoes. Ellison calmly slid over a folder. Inside were photos. Time-stamped. Her and Trevor at the coffee shop. Her wearing his hoodie. Her walking out of his apartment building 2 mornings in a row, once carrying shoes. Jessica's lawyer glanced at her, eyebrows raised. She didn't blink. Didn't even turn red. I don't see how this is relevant, she said. I tilted my head. You don't see how staying overnight with someone else, while we were married, might impact your claim on my house? She shrugged. We were emotionally separated long before that. Were we? I asked. Because I was still doing your laundry. She finally looked at me. It wasn't rage. It was annoyance. Like I'd said something mildly inconvenient. Like I'd forgotten to pick up milk. I don't want to get petty, she said. You left me at a party with no explanation and moved in with another man before I even changed the sheets. Jessica's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. The mediator asked for calm. But calm wasn't the problem, polish was. Jessica had polished her story so thoroughly she forgot some of us kept receipts. Next came the car. She wanted it. Said she needed it for work. Ellison pointed out she hadn't made a single payment on it in 24 months and had already racked up 2 speeding tickets she'd never told me about. Jessica interrupted. This is all vindictive. He's trying to punish me because I moved on. I smiled, slow and quiet. No, I'm punishing you because you lied. If you just admitted what you did, I might have handed you the keys myself. But you walked out and then came back for the furniture. That's when her mask cracked, just slightly. Her lips thinned, her eyes went colder, and her voice, finally, lost that professional glaze. You think you're better than me, Brian? Just because you play the victim better? Ellison leaned forward, calm as ice. Jessica, my client isn't playing anything. He's simply responding to facts. You abandoned the marital home without notice. You moved in with another individual within 24 hours. And now you're demanding assets you didn't contribute to. The room went still. Jessica laughed. But it was brittle. You know what? Keep the house. Keep the stupid car. You'll still be the loneliest man in it. And there it was. The truth. The venom under the perfume. She didn't want the property. She wanted proof she still had reach. That she could still pull the strings. She wanted to haunt me, but I was already ghost-proof. The mediation was adjourned without resolution. We were instructed to take time to reflect and return if necessary. As we walked out, I held the door open. She paused beside me. You think this is over? She asked quietly. I looked her dead in the eye. No, I think you're over. She didn't reply. She walked out and didn't look back. And for the first time since the night she left with another man, I didn't look after her. It didn't take long. 3 days after mediation collapsed, I got the email. Not from her. From her lawyer again. This time, the subject line said, New financial disclosures and intent to file for spousal support. I didn't open it right away. I stared at it. Let the words simmer in the corner of my laptop like a pot left on a low burner. I already knew what was inside. The last desperate move in a tired playbook. Jessica wanted alimony. She wasn't entitled to it. We'd been married 3 years. She had a degree, job offers, and an abandoned online store that had bled my savings dry before she got bored of it. But still, she was trying to claim emotional stress and loss of career progression due to the instability of the marriage. She wasn't done. She was just switching weapons. I called Ellison. He sounded more amused than angry. Honestly, I've seen more original plays from soap operas, he said. But we'll respond. Let her waste her time and money. Every step she takes now just makes your case cleaner. I asked if we could fight it aggressively. We will, he said. We'll bury this in facts. But I'll warn you, this isn't just about money anymore. This is about her ego. That much I already knew. She'd lost control. First of the narrative, then of me, now of the legal game she thought she could rig. And like a gambler on a losing streak, she was doubling down instead of walking away. But something else was brewing, something I hadn't expected. Trevor. He reached out. It started with a DM on Instagram. A throwaway account, no profile picture. I almost ignored it until I read the message. Hey man, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but can we talk? It's about her. I stared at it for a solid 5 minutes. Could have been bait. Could have been guilt. Could have been 100 things. But my gut told me one thing. He was slipping out from under her thumb, and now he wanted to crawl clean. So I replied. We met at a bar near his office. Public place. Neutral ground. He showed up looking tired, rumpled, like the shine had worn off his whole life. Same designer coat, but the swagger was gone. He sat across from me, hands clasped like he was praying before confession. I didn't know you were still together, he said immediately. I didn't reply. I let him keep talking. She told me you were separated, that you were living in separate rooms, that you didn't talk. She said you were emotionally manipulative, and that she was scared of you. That word hung there. Scared. Then why'd she keep coming back to the house? I asked. Why'd she try to keep the house if she was scared of me? He exhaled. I didn't start asking the right questions until recently. She's really good at making people feel like they're the only one who understands her. Then she flips it. What happened? She started doing it to me, he said, telling people I was unpredictable, that I changed. She told her friends I pressured her into moving in, said I was unstable. He paused, then looked me dead in the eye. She's rewriting me now, like she did with you. And there it was, the pattern, clear, brutal, perfect. She hadn't just betrayed me, she'd rehearsed it. I was chapter 1, he was chapter 2. There would be a chapter 3 and 4 and 5, each one staged with a new villain and a fresh costume. And each time, she'd play the wronged, tragic heroine clawing her way toward whatever spotlight would have her. Trevor leaned in. I just wanted you to know. You weren't crazy. She's not who she pretends to be. I nodded slowly. Thanks. But I already figured that out the hard way. He gave a small, guilty smile. Me too. As we left, he stopped me outside. She told me you were dangerous, he said. That if I ever reached out to you, you'd snap. That you'd come after me. I looked at him, steady. And now? She was wrong, he said. About everything. Jessica didn't message me again that week. Probably too busy scrambling to find a new angle. Maybe rewriting Trevor in real time. But I could feel it, her world was tightening. The walls were getting closer. The story was slipping. And all I had to do now was hold the line. Because she'd played everyone around her like pieces. But the board was shifting. And this time, she didn't get to move the king. The silence didn't last. She resurfaced the following Monday. Not through her lawyer. Not through a burner account or a note slid under the door. She came to my office. My work. The receptionist buzzed my line. There's a woman here to see you. Says it's urgent. Won't say her name. I knew who it was before I even stood up. I walked into the lobby and there she was. Jessica, standing like she still belonged in my life. Arms crossed. Hair done perfectly like she needed the illusion of control. She didn't look angry. She looked focused. That same laser-eyed look she'd get when she wanted to win an argument before it even started. Brian, she said, cool as steel. I just want 5 minutes. I gestured toward the conference room without speaking. She walked ahead like she owned the place. Still performing. We sat at opposite ends of the table. I didn't offer coffee. I didn't offer anything. I spoke to Trevor, I said immediately. Before she could open her mouth, she flinched, just barely, but I saw it. It was the first true expression I'd seen from her in weeks. You're talking to him now? She said, voice sharp. So what? Are you two bonding over how difficult I am? No. We're comparing timelines. She went silent. That was my cue. You lied to both of us. Told him I was abusive. Told me you were loyal. Told Amanda you were heartbroken. Told your lawyer you were owed something. You've built this house of mirrors and now you're panicking because you can't find the exit. You think you're so righteous, she hissed. Like you've never done anything wrong. I didn't betray you, I said calmly. I didn't vanish into someone else's apartment. Then come home and ask for half the kitchen. Jessica leaned back, arms tight across her chest, like she was holding herself together. You made me feel invisible. No, I said, leaning in. You made yourself invisible. You stopped talking. You started hiding. You lied even when the truth would have been easier. You didn't fall out of love. You rebranded yourself as the victim the minute it got hard. You don't get it, she said, quieter now. You always needed things to be neat. I needed something else. You needed someone who'd let you disappear without consequences. She blinked, and for a moment, just a flicker, I saw something in her eyes that looked like regret, not because she missed me, but because the scaffolding she'd built to hold up her version of reality was starting to collapse. Why are you really here? I asked. She hesitated. That told me more than her answer ever could. Then she said it. Quiet. Clipped. Trevor broke up with me. There it was. The real reason. Not the house. Not the money. Not even me. She had nowhere else to go. She thought she could come back. Not to the relationship, but to control. To familiarity. To the version of me who once would have tried to fix everything, no matter how many pieces she'd shattered. He said I lied too much, she muttered. That I make people feel like they're drowning. I didn't gloat. Didn't smirk. I just let the words hang in the room until she started fidgeting with her bracelet. I didn't come here to beg, she added quickly. I just thought. You should know. I stood. I already knew. She didn't follow me to the door. She sat there for a few seconds, as if she still expected the scene to turn in her favor. As if the script had one more twist to hand her. Didn't. When I reached the door, I looked back once. You didn't destroy me, I said. You just revealed who you are. She didn't look up. I walked out, told the receptionist to make sure she never came in again, then went back to my office. Back to my life. The one she wasn't invited to anymore. Because it wasn't just about surviving her anymore. It was about being absolutely unreachable. It's strange how quiet the world becomes when the chaos finally stops echoing. I thought closure would come like a door slamming shut. Loud, dramatic, final. But it didn't. It arrived like a whisper. No announcement. No final showdown. Just space. Silence. Sanity. It's been 4 weeks since Jessica showed up at my office. She hasn't contacted me since. No more emails. No texts. Not even a lawyer's letter. Just radio silence. I don't know if she left town. I don't care. I stopped tracking her digital footprints. Stopped checking mutual friend stories for background glimpses. I'm done. Amanda and I still talk. Less about her now, more about life. She told me the friend group around Jessica has thinned to almost nothing. People got tired. People saw through her. Trevor's out of the picture completely. Apparently, he's dating someone else now. Someone far away from that toxic spotlight Jessica drags behind her. Smart guy. Late but smart. The house is different now. I got rid of the couch she picked. Repainted the bedroom walls. Switched out the cutlery for no reason other than wanting her fingerprints completely gone from every drawer, every surface, every memory. I kept one thing, though. That note she left me, the printed one. Folded and stashed away in a small box with the case file, the court documents, and a USB drive full of screenshots I no longer need. Not because I want to reopen the wound, but because I want to remember that version of me, the guy who thought love meant endurance, who thought loyalty was a virtue even when it turned him into a doormat, who watched someone walk out with another man and still asked himself if he was the one who failed. I'm not that man anymore, and here's what I've learned. What I wish someone had told me when it all started. Not every betrayal is loud. Some come with a smile. Some come dressed in a green dress at a party, laughing too hard at a stranger's joke while your drink gets warm in your hand. Some people don't leave you in one moment. They disappear in layers. And by the time you notice, they're already gone. Only now they're asking for your furniture. Closure doesn't come when they apologize. It comes when you stop waiting for them to. When you realize their story isn't yours to fix. That no amount of understanding will rewrite their lies into truth. So to anyone reading this who feels the knot in their gut, who's watching their partner shift from human to stranger right before their eyes, don't wait for proof that burns. The truth doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just stops holding your hand. I don't hate Jessica. Hate would still mean I'm giving her space in my life. She's simply a lesson now. A chapter one read too many times before realizing the plot never changed. And now the lock fits only one key. Mine. And she'll never hold it again.